Hello and welcome to this video. Throughout this course, you will learn the basics of Python so that you can choose a more specific path after that. So you want to start learning Python, huh? You might think it's really complicated and that you need to be a nerd to even start programming, but in reality, it is way easier than you think. You don't even need to install anything to start. There are a number of online Python interpreters that do the trick. I'll teach you how to use Online GDB, which is a very famous one. The first thing I'll teach you is how to print messages to the screen. And it's very simple. You just write print, open parentheses, the message you want to print in between quotes, and then you close parentheses. When you finish writing your code, just press the button Run on the top of the screen. See, you already know how to code something. Next up, I'll teach you about variables. We'll cover the basics of how to store and manipulate data in Python. We'll look at different data types, such as integers, floats, and strings, and we'll explore how to use variables to store and work with this data. Let's start with variables. Variables are simply names that we can use to store data in Python. We can think of variables as labels for values that we want to use in our code. To create a variable in Python, we just need to assign a value to a name. For example, we can create a variable called x and assign it the value of 42 like this. Now, we can use the variable x in our code wherever we want to use the value 42. We can also change the value of a variable at any time by simply assigning a new value to it. That is very useful because imagine we have a large code base where you use a value a number of times, like the name of a character in a game. Now imagine you decided to change the name of the character in the middle of development. Now you just need to change the value you assign to your variable. Part 2. Data types. Python has several different data types that we can use to store data. The most common data types are integers, floats, and strings. Integers are whole numbers, such as 42 or -7. Floats are decimal numbers, such as 3.14 or -0.42, and strings are sequences of characters, such as hello world or Python is awesome. To create an integer in Python, we just need to assign a whole number to a variable. For example, x equals 42. We read x is assigned 42. To create a float, we just need to assign a decimal number to a variable. For example, y is assigned 3.14. And to create a string, we need to enclose a sequence of characters in quotes. For example, hello world. Now we can print all of those values to see that it's actually working. Part 3. Operators. Now that we know how to create variables and data types in Python, let's look at how we can manipulate this data using operators. Operators are symbols that we can use to perform operations on data. For example, we can use the addition operator, plus, to add two numbers together like this. X is assigned 42. Y is assigned 13. Result is assigned the sum of x and y. The result of this code would be 55, which is stored in the variable result, as we can see by printing its value. We can also use the subtraction, multiplication, asterisk, and division operators to perform other arithmetic operations on numbers. Part 4. Type conversion. Sometimes we may need to convert data from one type to another. For example, we may have a string that represents a number, but we need to perform arithmetic operations on it. To convert data from one type to another in Python, we can use the built-in functions int, float, and str. For example, here we convert the variable x that was originally a string into an integer. We can prove it's an integer by adding it to another integer. Part 5. User input. The last thing I want to talk about today is how to get user input. Because as cool as your program might be, we want it to respond differently according to how the user interacts with it, isn't it? To get input from the user in Python, we use the built-in function input. Very convenient naming, huh? But we need to be cautious. Input returns a string. So if we are expected to perform arithmetic operations with user input, we need to first convert it to int or to float. If we try to add x to a number without converting it to a number, the program throws an error saying we can only concatenate two strings, not a string, and a number. You'll learn more in depth what concatenation is later on. Conclusion. That's it for this video on Python variables and data types. We've covered the basics of how to create and manipulate data in Python, and we've looked at different data types such as integers, floats, and strings. We've also explored how to use operators to perform arithmetic operations on data and how to convert data from one type to another using built-in functions. Finally, we looked at how to get user input and perform operations with it. If you like a challenge, this is the perfect time. Try to write a program that receives two variables from the user and prints their sum, their product, and the quotient between them. This way you practice all the concepts from this lesson. Thanks for watching and happy coding.